I remember that night like it just happened yesterday. The rain wasn't just falling. It was pouring so hard it felt like the sky was splitting open. I was driving home from my late shift, wipers struggling to keep up, headlights cutting through the sheets of water. The road was empty except for me, winding through a stretch of forest that always felt too quiet, even during the day. I'd driven that route 100 times, but that night, something felt different. The kind of stillness that makes your chest tighten, like you're being watched through the dark. My phone kept lighting up on the passenger seat, unknown number, over and over. I thought maybe it was a wrong number, but they kept calling every few minutes, never leaving a message. When I finally picked up, there was just silence. Not even breathing. Just faint static, like someone was there but didn't want to speak. I hung up and turned the radio on just to fill the air, but even that made it worse. Every song cut in and out with bursts of static, like the signal was being jammed. A few miles later, I noticed headlights behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it, just another driver. But the car stayed perfectly in sync with mine. Every turn, every slowdown, they matched me. I tried switching lanes, slowing down to let them pass, but they didn't. They stayed right behind me, their lights cutting into my mirrors, too close to feel safe. The rain was hammering down so hard I could barely see, and for a second, I thought about pulling over. But the idea of stopping on that empty, soaked road made my stomach twist. The calls started again, one after another. Every time I answered, silence. Until finally, on the 5th call, I heard something faint. A voice, whispering so softly I could barely make it out. It said my name. Just that. My full name. And then the line went dead. That's when I realized, whoever was behind me, they weren't a stranger. They knew me. I pressed harder on the gas, trying to shake the car behind me, but it stayed locked on my tail. My pulse was pounding so hard it felt like I could hear it echoing inside the car. The rain blurred everything, trees melting into black shapes, road lines vanishing underwater. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence, that whoever was driving probably lived somewhere down the same road. But the calls wouldn't stop. Every time I silenced one, another came through seconds later. Always the same number. When I reached the outskirts of town, I turned down a narrow side road leading toward my apartment. It was a dead-end street, just a few small houses and a lot of trees. The kind of place where sound disappears after dark. The headlights behind me followed, creeping closer until they were almost kissing my bumper. I could feel the heat of the engine behind me through the rain. My stomach sank. I turned sharply into my driveway, heart racing, and stopped under the porch light. The car behind me slowed at the intersection, idled for a few seconds, then reversed and drove away. I sat there for a moment, breathing hard, watching the taillights fade into the darkness. My hands were shaking when I finally turned off the engine. I checked my phone, no missed calls now. The number had disappeared from the call log. Completely gone, like it never existed. Inside, the power was flickering. The rain against the windows was constant, heavy, almost drowning out every other sound. I changed out of my soaked clothes and sat by the window, trying to calm down. That's when I noticed it. The porch light, the one that had always stayed on all night, was off now. Just darkness outside, nothing visible but my faint reflection in the glass. Then, from somewhere in the rain, I heard it. A faint tapping. Not random, steady. Like someone knocking on metal. I froze. The sound was coming from near my car. I leaned closer to the window, squinting through the blur of water and darkness. That's when I saw movement, a shadow slipping between the trees, just at the edge of the driveway. I grabbed my phone to call someone, anyone, but my hands were trembling too much. I ended up dialing my ex, Maya. She and I hadn't talked in weeks since our breakup, but in that moment, she was the only person I could think of. When she picked up, her voice was low, hesitant. I told her everything, about the car, the calls, the person outside. There was a pause, a long one. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "I told you to stop calling me from that number," she whispered. "It's not funny anymore." And then she hung up. I stood there, staring at my phone, my brain struggling to process what she'd just said. I hadn't called her in weeks, especially not from a different number. My hands were still shaking when I opened my recent calls, but the screen was empty. Every call from that unknown number was gone again, wiped clean. I checked the clock, 2:37 a.m. The storm outside had gotten worse, wind howling like it was trying to tear the roof off. And underneath it all, that tapping sound had come back. Louder now. Closer. I moved toward the door, trying to listen, heart pounding in my throat. The porch light flickered once, then came back on. and for just a second, I saw someone standing at the edge of the light. A man, drenched head to toe in rain, head tilted slightly, watching me through the glass. I stumbled back, fumbling for my phone, but it slipped from my hand and hit the floor. The screen cracked. I looked up again, and the figure was gone. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a kitchen knife, and ran to the back door to check if it was locked. It was. I turned around to check the front again, but the living room window was open now. Rain blowing in, curtains snapping in the wind. I felt the air shift, that cold pressure of someone else being inside. My breath caught. I turned toward the hallway, slow, every instinct screaming not to move. Then a voice came from the dark. Calm. Too familiar. Why'd you stop answering? I froze. It was Maya's voice. My throat went dry. She stepped into the light, soaked, hair plastered to her face, eyes wide and strange. She looked exhausted, but her expression was wrong. Almost detached. I wanted to see how it felt, she said quietly, staring at me. To make you feel what I felt when you ignored me. She took another step forward, knife glinting in her hand. You made me disappear, she whispered. So I made sure you'd know what it's like to be. 1 second I was frozen, the next I was running. I bolted down the hallway and slammed the bedroom door, locking it with trembling hands. My chest was tight, breath coming in short, sharp bursts. I could hear her outside the door, whispering things I couldn't make out over the storm. The handle rattled once, twice, then stopped. Silence. Only the rain. I grabbed my phone from the floor and crawled into the corner. The screen was cracked, but still worked enough to dial 911. My voice shook as I tried to explain what was happening. The dispatcher kept asking if I knew the person. I didn't answer. I just kept repeating my address until she said officers were on the way. Minutes felt like hours. Every creak in the house made my skin crawl. When the sirens finally came through the rain, I didn't move until I heard pounding on the front door and someone yelling, "Police." They found me still sitting on the floor, gripping the knife, soaked in sweat and shaking. They searched the property for nearly an hour. No footprints. No car. No sign of anyone ever being there. The back door was wide open, swinging in the wind. They told me maybe I imagined it, maybe it was stress or exhaustion. But before they left, one of the officers handed me something they'd found in my car. My spare phone, one I hadn't used in months. The last call on it was from my number. It's been almost a year, and I still can't drive in the rain. Every time it starts to pour, I feel my chest tighten, and that same cold dread creeps up my spine. The police never found her. They said there was no record of Maya leaving town, no proof she'd ever been at my house that night. Her apartment was empty, clothes gone, phone disconnected. It's like she vanished. Sometimes I tell myself maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was just someone pretending to be. But then I remember her voice, how calm it sounded, how she said those words like she'd been rehearsing them. She wanted me to know what it felt like to be invisible, to be ignored until the silence drove her mad. And I did. I know now. I live with that silence every single night. I moved out a few months later, but I still keep the old phone in a drawer. I've tried to throw it away a dozen times, but I can't. Every so often, when the weather turns dark, the screen lights up again, unknown number. No ringtone, no vibration, just the glow in the dark. I never answer anymore. But sometimes, when I'm lying there listening to the rain, I swear I can still hear her whisper, soft, distant, broken. You made me disappear. I was working the night shift at a small roadside motel, just off the highway. It was one of those places people stopped at only when they were too tired to keep driving. 10 rooms, flickering neon signs, and a parking lot that turned into a mirror when it rained. That night, the rain was relentless. I remember the sound, a steady, heavy rhythm against the metal roof, the kind that made you feel trapped inside your own thoughts. Around midnight, I was at the front desk, sipping stale coffee and scrolling through my phone, when I noticed a car pull into the lot. Headlights cut through the rain for a moment, then switched off. The driver didn't get out. They just sat there, engine idling, wipers moving back and forth. At first, I figured they were just gathering themselves before checking in. But 5 minutes passed, then 10, and still no one came inside. Something about it felt off. The way the lights flickered through the blinds, the faint hum of the car still running. I tried to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped outside under the awning, rain spraying my face as I squinted toward the lot. The car's windshield was fogged, but I could make out a shape in the driver's seat. I called out, asked if they needed help, but the figure didn't move. Just sat there, head slightly tilted toward me. The sound of the rain filled the silence between us. I took a step closer. That's when the car lights suddenly turned on, blinding me. And through that glare, I swear I saw the driver's door slowly opening. I stumbled back under the awning, shielding my eyes from the light. For a few seconds, I couldn't see anything but white spots, and when my vision cleared, the car door was open, rain spilling onto the seat, but no one was inside. The engine was still running, headlights cutting across the empty lot. My heart started pounding. I called out again, louder this time, but no answer. The motel was quiet, every door shut, every room dark except for room 4. The one an older man had checked into earlier that evening. He'd seemed polite but nervous, avoiding eye contact, asking for a room far from the road. I thought maybe the car belonged to him. So, I grabbed the spare keys from behind the desk and went to check. The rain was cold and sharp against my face as I crossed the lot. The car door hung open, the driver's seat empty. A duffel bag sat in the passenger seat, unzipped, with clothes spilling out, all black, soaked from the rain. No wallet, no phone, nothing to identify who it belonged to. Just a set of motel keys hanging from the ignition, room 4. When I reached his door, I hesitated. The sound of the rain seemed to fade, replaced by something else, faint movement inside. I knocked once, twice. No reply. Then I heard it, a whisper. Just one word. Help. It was soft, almost drowned out by the storm, but it came from inside. I unlocked the door slowly and pushed it open. The smell hit me first, damp carpet and something metallic underneath. The lights were off, but the bathroom door was cracked open, light spilling across the floor. I stepped inside, calling out quietly. The whisper came again, trembling, broken. When I reached the bathroom, my throat tightened. The man from earlier was sitting on the floor, back against the tub, eyes wide. His face was pale, his shirt soaked, not from rain, but sweat and fear. He looked at me like I wasn't real. "He's here," he said. His voice was shaking. He followed me. Before I could ask who he meant, something clattered outside, the sound of footsteps running past the window. Heavy, fast, splashing through puddles. I froze. The man flinched, grabbing my wrist. "You shouldn't have come out here," he whispered. "He watches from the dark. He waits for the rain." And then the power went out. The whole place went black. The only light came from the occasional flash of lightning slicing through the window, turning the room into fragments of white and shadow. I couldn't hear anything but the rain hammering against the roof, until the sound of slow footsteps started outside the door. I held my breath. The man was trembling beside me, whispering something under his breath. A prayer maybe, but I couldn't make out the words. Another flash of lightning lit up the window, and for a split second, I saw a figure standing just outside, head turned toward us. Whoever it was, they were still. Too still. Then came the sound of metal scraping across the wall, a long, steady drag that sent shivers up my spine. The man started crying softly, rocking back and forth. I wanted to move, to say something, but fear rooted me in place. The scraping stopped. Silence again. Suddenly, the doorknob started to turn, slow and deliberate. I grabbed the man's arm and pulled him back toward the bathroom. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. We locked the door and crouched behind the tub, listening. The front door creaked open. Footsteps entered the room. Wet shoes on tile. Breathing. Deep, calm breathing, like someone completely unafraid. Lightning flashed again, and through the crack under the bathroom door, I saw boots, dark, heavy, leaving trails of muddy water as they moved closer. Then a hand gripped the doorknob, testing it. The man was whispering my name now, over and over, pleading for me not to make a sound. The knob twisted harder, metal straining against the lock. For a moment, I thought it would snap. Then nothing. The sound stopped. The front door slammed a second later, hard enough to rattle the walls. The silence that followed was unbearable. When I finally opened the bathroom door, the room was empty, except for a wet set of footprints leading from the doorway. Written in the fogged mirror above it were 3 words. "You were followed." The police showed up 20 minutes later. By then, the storm had almost passed, leaving behind that heavy stillness that only comes after a long night of rain. I tried to explain everything, the car, the man, the footprints, but they looked at me like I was half crazed. They searched every room, every corner of the property, even the tree line behind the motel. Nothing. No intruder. No signs of forced entry. The man from room 4 wouldn't stop shaking. He kept saying he told them this would happen, that the rain brings him back. The officers didn't understand what he meant, neither did I. When they tried to question him, he just stared at the floor, silent, until they finally took him away in an ambulance. I stayed behind, helping them clear the scene. The strange part was, when they checked the lot, the car was gone. The puddles where it had been parked were still rippling, but the car itself had vanished like it had never been there. Inside the office, I noticed something that made my stomach twist: the spare keys. The ring that had been hanging behind the desk was missing. Only the label remained, dangling from an empty hook. Room 4. I called out to the officers, but they were already leaving. One of them turned back, rain dripping from his cap, and said quietly, "Kid, this place doesn't even have a room for anymore. It was sealed off years ago." I quit the motel job 2 days later. I told my manager I couldn't work nights anymore, but the truth was I couldn't even walk past that hallway. Every time I tried, I'd feel it, that same quiet pressure in the air, like someone was still in there waiting. The local police wrote everything off as stress, saying maybe I imagined more than what really happened. But they couldn't explain the missing keys, or the footprints, or the fogged mirror. Sometimes late at night, when it rains, I still think about that man, the look in his eyes when he said he's here. I tried searching for him at the hospital, but there were no records of anyone being admitted from that motel. No name, no report, like he'd vanished the moment he left. The new clerk who took my place called me a few weeks later. He sounded nervous and said the manager told him to reopen room 4 for storage. But when he unlocked the door, the lights wouldn't turn on, and the air smelled like wet earth. He said there was writing on the wall behind the mirror, faint but still there. Same 3 words. "You were followed." Sometimes I still dream about that night. I wake up to the sound of rain on the window, and for a split second, I swear I can see headlights waiting outside. Just sitting there, engine running. I was 17 when it happened. It was a Friday night, and the rain hadn't stopped since morning. My parents were out of town, so the house was mine for the weekend, or at least that's how I saw it then. I remember sitting by the window, lights off, watching the street lights shimmer on the wet pavement. Everything was quiet except for the rain. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. At first, I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. When I finally checked, there was a message. "You shouldn't be alone tonight." My stomach tightened. I thought it was one of my friends trying to mess with me. They knew I hated storms. So I texted back, very funny. "Who is this?" No reply. I tossed the phone aside and turned on the TV, trying to drown out the unease. A few minutes later, I noticed something outside. Across the street, under the flickering streetlight, someone was standing in the rain. Not moving, just watching my house. It was hard to make out any details, just a dark figure, half hidden by the downpour. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a neighbor walking their dog. But when I looked again, they were closer. I pulled the curtains shut, heart pounding, but I couldn't stop myself from peeking through the gap. The street was empty now. No one there. Just the rain. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, the message was short. "Why did you close the curtains?" My mouth went dry. I stared at the screen, rereading the message until the letters blurred. There was no way anyone could have seen me close the curtains. Not unless they were standing right outside. My heart started pounding so loud I could barely hear the rain. I turned off the TV and the lamp, trying to quiet everything to listen. That's when I heard it, a soft tap, then another, coming from the living room window. I froze. The tapping stopped as soon as I moved closer. I stood there for a few seconds, breath shallow, then pulled the curtain back just enough to peek out. Nothing. Just the dark, the rain, and the reflection of my own scared face. I told myself to stop overthinking. Probably just branches hitting the glass. I even laughed a little, trying to shake it off. But then my phone buzzed again. This time, there was a photo attached. It took me a few seconds to realize what I was looking at. It was the outside of my house. My living room window. The same one I was standing in front of. I stumbled back so fast I hit the coffee table. My hands were trembling as I texted back. "Who are you?" No reply. Just the sound of the rain growing heavier, like it was swallowing every noise in the world. I locked all the doors, double-checked the windows, even turned on every light in the house. I called my best friend, Nate. He lived a few streets away. He answered half asleep, groaning at first, but when he heard my voice, he woke up fast. I told him what was happening, about the texts, the photo, everything. He said he'd come over, told me to stay on the call until he got there. The minutes dragged on. I sat on the floor by the front door, clutching the phone. I could hear his car engine through the call, getting closer. Then he said something that made my blood freeze. I'm pulling into your street now. Wait, who's that standing in your yard? Before I could answer, there was a loud knock at the door. Slow, steady, 3 times. Nate, I whispered. Silence. Then a voice, low, muffled through the wood. Let me in. It's me. But something about it was wrong. It didn't sound like Nate. It sounded close, too close, like the voice was smiling. I gripped the phone tighter, trying to steady my breathing. On the other end, Nate's voice was still there, clear, panicked. Dude, don't open that door. I'm not there yet. I'm just turning the corner. My blood went cold. The voice outside knocked again, harder this time. Come on, it said, still calm, still pretending to be him. It's pouring out here. Let me in. I backed away slowly, my whole body shaking. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come out. Through the peephole, I could barely make out a shape. Someone standing completely still, hood up, drenched in rain. Lightning flashed, lighting up their face for half a second. It wasn't Nate. It wasn't anyone I recognized. Then the doorknob started to turn. Gently, testing it. I stumbled back and whispered into the phone. He's trying to get in. Nate's voice cracked through the speaker. Call the cops. Now. I ran toward the kitchen, but before I could grab my phone, a window shattered behind me. The sound ripped through the air like a scream. Glass flew across the room, and I dropped to the floor, covering my head. Through the rain, I heard footsteps inside, slow, deliberate. He was in the house. I crawled toward the hallway, trying not to make a sound. My heart felt like it was going to burst. The footsteps stopped. Then came that same voice, only softer now, almost gentle. Why did you close the curtains? He was right behind me. I turned, swinging the nearest thing I could find, a broken lamp base. It connected with something solid, and I ran. Out the back door, barefoot in the rain, not even looking back. I kept running until I saw Nate's headlights cutting through the darkness. When he reached me, I was shaking so hard I could barely speak. He looked at my house, front door wide open, lights still on, but no one came out. The police arrived 20 minutes later. By then, I was sitting in Nate's car, wrapped in a blanket, staring at my house through the rain. It looked so normal, so quiet, like nothing had happened. The front door swung slowly with every gust of wind, went inside, creaking like I couldn't even watch. I just listened, their boots echoing on the wet floor, the low murmur of their radios, the crackle of thunder. After a while, one of them came out and asked if I was sure I'd seen someone. I nodded, but the look he gave me said he didn't believe it. They said the house was empty. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, no blood. Just the shattered glass from the kitchen window. They found my phone on the floor where I'd dropped it, screen cracked, messages gone. Every text, every photo deleted. The officer told me it was probably a prank. Some kids are messing around, he said. But I saw the way his expression changed when another cop called him back inside. When he came out again, he didn't say anything. Just handed me my phone unlocked. On the screen was a single photo, taken minutes before the break-in. It was me, sitting by the window, curtains open, looking straight into the camera. For weeks after that night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me flinch, the hum of the fridge, the wind against the windows, even the faint creak of the floorboards. The police never found out who sent those messages. The number was untraceable, and the photo's metadata showed nothing. No time, no location, no device. It was like it appeared out of nowhere. I moved my bed away from the window after that. I stopped using curtains altogether. Somehow, it felt safer to see the dark outside than to wonder what might be hiding behind it. But sometimes, when it rains, I still catch myself checking my phone, half expecting that same message to appear again. Nate doesn't talk about that night anymore. He says it's better to forget, but I can't. I keep thinking about that voice, how calm it was, how sure. Like it knew me. Like it had been waiting. Last week, I got a new phone. Fresh number, clean slate. I didn't tell anyone except my family and Nate. 2 nights later, while it was raining, I got a text from an unknown number. Just one sentence. You shouldn't be alone tonight. I stared at it for a long time, then turned my phone face down. Outside, through the window, I swear I saw someone standing under the streetlight, still, silent, watching. And this time, I didn't close the curtains.